Hello there. Good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you all here to the Prog Monster. My name is Murph. I am the host of this show. This is Into the Progverse, and today we're going to be talking about those prog albums released in 2025. Decided I would go big a jump here. I don't have many. I will admit that freely. I have five albums that kind of fall in the prog elements. Some of them a little more than others, some of them a little spacey, but generally speaking, there I have five. And then I have I've kept my other computer on because there's a list of about, I'm going to guess between maybe 8 and 10 albums that I looked at getting, but in this world of economic choices, I had to choose other albums over them. So, and actually, I don't even think it's a case of choosing. When I look at some of these other albums, it wasn't really a case of choosing these albums over them. These albums, for the most part, all of them were available at the store, with the exception of the bottom two, and they were two that I definitely wanted. It. Some of these other albums I want to, but not at the prices they're currently for sale. So, with a lot of these albums, they'll probably end up in my collection in a couple of years, like a year or so after, because the price will be less, and then that makes them more acceptable to me. So that's basically how I have come to choose my albums now. It's not like it's kind of similar to the way it was, I guess, when I was a kid or a teenager is probably a better accurate term because that's really when rock started for me in my teens. A lot of those albums that I chose back then were I only had so much money, especially once I started working, I had more money, but I didn't have um, an overabundance of money. So if I went to the record store often, I had $20, or maybe I might have had 30. Most of the time it was 15 or $20, which would have got you two, possibly three albums, depending on what you bought. And so I would get one or two or three albums, and I would have to sometimes if I was only getting a couple, there might have been that third or fourth album that I wanted, but I could only choose two. So usually most of the time I chose the newer ones because those were the ones that just came out and I was into them. And then the next time I would go to the record store, instead of getting the albums I didn't get the last time, newer ones would be out. I would see them, and then these albums would never get bought. And that's generally how it works today, too. Although not quite as bad. I tend to get what I want. Once I have to make two determinations. First of all, how badly do I want the album? And two, how much am I willing to pay for it? So those are two very different questions. The first one is usually I want them pretty badly. Sometimes I know an album, I've listened to it on the internet, and I know I'm going to like it. So I want it pretty badly. Sometimes I like the group, but I haven't really listened to the album, but I like the group enough to want it as well, but not necessarily badly. So um, then it's just a case of how much am I spending that day. So I try to limit the amount that I'm going to buy um, with with just reality. If I go there with $40 or $50, I'm going to get probably, if I buy all used ones, I might get four. If I'm buying new ones, I might only get two. So I usually go over the limit, but I try not to because then I got to pay for it, right? I guess I better put my glasses on if I can just find them here. Here we are, somewhere. Oh, maybe I don't have them. Well, that's going to make it difficult, isn't it? So you'll have to excuse me for a minute while I attempt to find my glasses. So I'm going to close that. Okay, I apologize for my tardiness. For some reason, I think for some reason I took my glasses out in the front room. I already have a pair out there. I don't know why I do this, but and the same with pens. Instead of leaving the pens that I have here in the drawer in case I need them in front of my computer, I carry them around and then pretty soon I don't have any. And that's the same thing I just did now. Good evening, Ben. I hope we're not going to go at this again, are we? Anyways, we're here to tonight to talk about these prog albums released in 2025. I thought it was a good year for prog albums. Happy Easter, Ben. Happy Easter to you and your family too. And all you people in Australia who are suffering from the same problems we are in Canada. Not enough money. Anyways, yeah, so it was a good year. Last year was a good year for prog. I don't know if this year is quite as good. I would say that I split the show in two, as most people know who followed the channel. I wanted to do more new albums, and the only way to do that was to separate the prog albums from the regular albums, which are all the other genres, in my opinion. Although I often include the space rock albums in with the prog albums as well. And if I do any jazz fusion, which I don't do too much of, I do that as well in with the prog albums. But pretty much the hard rock and the metal and the pop and the southern rock and all that other stuff I just include on the what's new. So now that I've got two channels going, I've actually found that the prog albums this year haven't been as strong as last year's collection. And so it's been a little bit more difficult to find something to talk about on a regular basis in the prog community at this point in time. There has been some good ones, though. But we're not here to talk about this year. We're here to talk about next year. Next year, of last year. Sorry, I'm going in the wrong direction again. So last year, 2025, there was quite a few good ones. I did put up my secondary computer. I have a list from the Prog archives of all the albums released last year. And I'll talk, once I finish with these ones, I'm going to talk a bit about the ones that came out in 2025, as they were quite a few good ones that I didn't get. Now, several of them I know just by looking. I looked through it briefly earlier. I didn't get because their sites were in Europe, and therefore the album was going to be way too expensive. You know, an import from Europe at this time in history is tough. Everything's more expensive. Well, not necessarily more expensive for the album, but it's of course the cost of delivering them that costs all the money, right? And a lot of the record stores here, at least the ones that I go to, do not carry a lot of imports unless they're really well-known artists. You know, even some of the well-known artists they don't carry. So anyways, we're going to talk about these first five here that I have in front of me that I bought, and what I thought of them and why I like them and why I maybe didn't like them. You know, I don't think any of these were a huge disappointment, but I'll be honest, at least three of them were a little on the disappointing side. They weren't, and actually, when I look at them, all four of them, except for the one, were a little on the disappointing side. They weren't, I guess my expectations of them all were much higher than they deserved to have, right? Some of these other ones I think would have been just as good, though. Okay, so we're going to talk about first this album from Hawkwind. Now, There Is No Space for Us is the name of the album. Now, most people who follow Hawkwind at all, yeah, a lot of people um, it's difficult in your case, Ben. It's probably difficult. You have a family, and you have other things you have to do, and you can't spend all your time looking through every album. That's why you got people like me out here who have no life and have plenty of time for such nonsense, right? Anyways, this was a Hawkwind album. What I was going to say about Hawkwind is that for most of you who follow Hawkwind or listen to them at all, you all know that Hawkwind generally puts out an album per year. I think they went for like the first 20 years, they had at least one album every year. And then, of course, they have a absolute horde of live albums. But this one, which came out last year, musically, I think this is quite good. It's quite good. It's pretty typical of Hawkwind's musical thing. This one kind of has a little bit of a. I don't want to get political about it, so you can probably figure out where I'm going with it. There's a little bit of a political side to this album, and he definitely has a political view that I definitely don't share. So I'm not going to go too far about it that way. I don't want to make this about politics or anything. This is about music, and let's try to keep that other shit out of it. But that's part of the reason why I didn't really, I didn't overly love the album. The music is, of course, great. Hawkwind's albums are always good. They're always very similar. Kind of like AC/DC that way. AC/DC has a similar sound. If you want, Randy Bachman used to say he had a formula, and the formula worked well, so he stuck with it when he wrote his songs. And it was the same, I think, with AC/DC. Kind of the same with Hawkwind. Theirs is more, of course, space rock oriented. Yeah, there's no way, like Tangerine Dream and Hawkwind, it would be bankrupting to try to purchase all their albums. So you just have to pick them as they come. You see them for a decent price, you get them. I never buy a Hawkwind album brand new for the kind of ridiculous prices that people want, because I know it's just going to be still there in a week or two, and I'll just get it then. So, but this one was a decent album. Now, if I was going to, if you wanted a ranking of this album, I would say, some people like to give rankings out of 5. I tend to be more 10s. I'm a 10 guy. So I would say this is like maybe a 6.5 on a good day. So, but still not a bad album. Only negative part about it was kind of the lyrics and the storyline. That was a bit it for me. Other than that, if you're just listening to the music, it's probably quite good. So the next album out is another one that people are going to have some issues with. Jethro Tull's Curious Ruminant. So there seems to be two kind of camps here. The camp that wished he never came back, and the camp who liked the stuff he's done since he came back. His voice is not there anymore. Let's just be 100% clear about it. He does not have the Ian Anderson voice of the 70s and early 80s, which was among the very best rock voices out there. He doesn't have that anymore. It's gone. But he's written the music to try and play in the kind of area where his voice would fit in there without sounding out of place. And I think he's done a good job on that, on all 3 of the albums that he's done. No, these are not my top 5. These are just 5 albums that I own from last year's Prog albums. I don't actually remember what my top 5. I'm sure some of these are in it for sure. I'm sure some of them are in it for sure. I don't think this one was. This one's maybe in the top 10. I think I only did a top 20 last year for new albums, and that was when I was still on What's New, so it was mixed with all kinds of different stuff. This year it'll be only Prog for the Prog one. This is, like I said, it's a nice cover. I don't know why he insists on putting himself on some of these things. It's nothing worse than an old bald man on a cover, right? But this album was decent. I think it was better than its predecessor, which I liked initially, but kind of wore out fairly quickly with me. This one's a little better than that, but the voices are, again, if you don't like the fact that he can't really sing anymore and that he kind of I guess you would use the word, narrates it. Well, kind of sings and narrates at the same time. They're kind of the same thing for him now. Then you won't like this, And there's people that don't. The instrumentation is really good. The band sounds really good. The people he has on here: John O'Hara, Jack Clark, Scott Hammond, James Duncan, and Andrew Giddings is also on here playing some keyboards and stuff. And John Gooder is also on here too. So he's got 6 or 7 guys playing with him. Pretty solid. I just find his vocals aren't as good, but if you can get past his vocal part and listen to the music and enjoy the fact that he is trying to do this, then you're probably okay with this album. If I'm ranking this, I would give it like probably about a 5.5 or a 6, maybe a 6. I think a 6 is good for this album. So this is Jethro Tull's Curious Ruminant, their most recent album. Next up, this album is really good. This is a top album for me from last year. Steve Hackett's Live at the Trading Boundaries. This is quite good. I actually think the live DVD that I have is even better. This is quite good. He does do some of his own stuff and a lot of his stuff from more recent albums, but he also does some stuff from Live and Magic Trading Boundaries. Looking here, Walking Through the Rainbow. And I think he does do some stuff from Genesis as well. I don't see any on here, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm confusing this with the DVD and the Kid Out in the Front Room, which I like quite a bit. That's usually my go-to one. Yeah, do you like this, Ben? Do you find this a good, solid album? I like it. I think it's pretty solid. If I was giving it a ranking, it gets like a 7.5, which is pretty high for me. I'm really notorious for not giving anything over a 9. But I think it's a pretty solid album. His guitar playing is exceptional, as it always is. A lot of the music is kind of pastoral in nature, like very acoustic, if you want, classical sounding. But that's what I like about Steve Hackett. I think that's what I want Steve Hackett to sound like. Some people want him to be much more beefier and heavier, like he was on the previous album from the year before. I don't mind that. That's okay. Ace of Wands is on here too, which he does a good job on, by the way. However, I don't want my Steve Hackett to sound like a metal guitarist. I don't. There's lots of metal guitarists out there who I like, who do a great job doing what they're doing. However, this is not who Steve Hackett is. To me, Steve Hackett is a classical guitarist who can play the electric guitar very well, but I think I prefer him in that classical nature. So it's a good, solid album. Next up, we have this album, which I really liked initially. I really liked this album a lot. I couldn't wait to get it. So much so, actually, I think I grabbed the wrong one. And I did. Give me a second. I seen the one I wanted, and then for some reason I reached below it and grabbed the other one. So I have a couple by this band. So this is Evensong Out of Dust. Good album. Again, when I first listened to it, the first couple of times I listened, I liked it a lot. It just didn't have any staying power. After about a couple of months of listening to it, I wasn't really as enthusiastic as I was. I did buy a second one when I bought it, though. I bought 2 of them because I liked this one so much. If I was ranking it now, I'd probably give it about a 6 as well. Good, had a good impact on me initially. Just didn't live up to it towards the end. Quite a strong group, though. I don't know what you would. I don't think of these as sounding really like anybody else. I got this from Laser's Edge, by the way. So it's a good one. It's also a digipack, which I prefer over these stupid box things. I like Ben's idea about the taking the covers and photoing them and then adding them to a jewel case. That's a really good idea. So I'm going to look into doing some of that this summer if I can. Yeah, this is a pretty decent album. I guess it's kind of symphonic. Of course, a lot of them are now. It's got a little bit of that. I don't think it's overly pushy thing. This album finished in my top 10, or it made my list. I know that. It did much better initially, and then, like I said, faded a bit, but still pretty solid. Okay, the final album easily was my number one album last year. It hasn't done as well this year as I thought it would. So I didn't get it initially because it was so expensive. Oh, they started their own. Yeah, I see that. I thought that he was on the. I thought he was doing an episode on Sea of Tranquility, but I didn't really look that closely because I saw him on there and I thought it was Sea of Tranquility, but maybe it was his own channel. Maybe he started his own one to try and do his professor's picks every weekend, which he does. I sometimes like that quite a bit. I tend not to be a jazz fusion guy. I don't have anything against jazz fusion. It's just not. It's not something that really grabs me so easily. And they tend to talk a lot jazz fusion, which kind of loses me a bit. Not that I want it to lose me. That's just the way it is. This is the album I'm talking about today, IQ's Dominion. So when the first couple times I played this through the internet, oh yeah, definitely he's right at the top. You're bang on there. There's nobody in the same league with him as far as knowledge goes. I think Pete is really good. Maybe not quite as knowledgeable, but he delivers better. I think he just has more of a YouTube kind of personality, I guess is the best way to put it. He's very knowledgeable, though. They're both fairly good. I find Pete really knows what areas that people are listening to and how to say it, right? Really good. Anyways, this album came out near the beginning of last year. Yeah, when it comes to prog, there's nobody out there as good as Ken Golem. I buy a lot of my prog albums from him based on what he said about them. And that's just the truth. And he also, where prog is concerned, he tends to like the same prog as I do, which makes it easier. So if he likes something, I generally think I'll like it too. The only thing I don't like is the jazz fusion. There's not much jazz fusion that I really do like. There's been a couple that have kind of interested me. Maybe that's something I'll grow into. I'm not really sure. But at this point in time, if it's too much in the jazz fusion realm, I don't generally like it too much. Yeah, so this is quite good. When I first got it, I loved it. That's why it was album of the year last year for me. This year I got it late in the season last year, so it didn't get to really play in my playlist much, but it's been in my playlist for a while. And it's doing okay, but it's not doing what I thought it would do. And I'm not really sure why. Maybe it just hasn't resonated with me at this point in time. I'm not sure. It's still pretty solid though. All of that stuff that's come out from this band over the last decade and 2 decades has been just absolutely top shelf for me. Yeah, and I thank you for that, Ben, because you're the one that turned me on to these guys. I had never heard of them before until you gave me that Wake album on Ben's album challenge. From that point on, and if you remember correctly, and I'm sure you will, I did not like that album at first. I didn't like the vocalist. And then within a couple of listens, it kind of came to me. And then after that, that band just took right off for me. And they have some of the very best albums released this century. Probably my favorite album this century is Dark Matter. Probably. I'm not going to argue that it is or isn't, but I think it is. So yeah, this is pretty solid album. If I was ranking this, I'd probably give it a 7, maybe an 8, somewhere in there. So let's say 7.5. Solid album. Hasn't done as well, like I said, but still it did very well initially, so it's not too far. Yeah, Caravan was the same way. I actually did not like Caravan at all at first. And the only reason I stuck with them was because that album cover is brilliant. It's just fantastic. Kind of reminds me of the Pink Panther. But it's so detailed. You can look at it. It's almost like you're watching a village. It's so good. We're talking about in the land of gray and pink. and all of a sudden, it just, at first I liked the Golf Girl. That was the only one I liked. And then bang, after that, the album, I couldn't play it enough. I liked it so much. And now they're a band who is difficult to find their albums without going online. Sometimes they're expensive too. I was looking for them yesterday. I bought a box set yesterday from the Guess Who. It's their first 5 studio albums from the 1960s, and I got it for a good price, and I was happy to get it. I won't know if I'm happy to get it, to have gotten it, until it actually shows up here and I see what we're dealing with. But for the amount I paid, I was happy with that. Yeah, definitely a dangerous area, right? However, I do have several box sets that I like. The Fruit one, and the Green Slade one. Well, the Green Slade one really wasn't a box set. I could have bought the box set and I would have had the 4 albums I got, but I decided to buy the jewel cases, which had two of the albums on each, and I quite like that. The Scorpions box set was, the albums are good, box set's not so good. Some of the other box sets I have, the Electric Prunes one is pretty damn good too. I like that one. So most of the box sets, even the Atomic Rooster one, I don't mind either. Jesus Christ, man. You're going to bankrupt me with that thinking. Anyways, those are the 5 albums I own. I think about at least 3 of them, maybe all 4. They might all be in my top 20 albums of the year. They're not 1 through 5 though. I know that for sure. So some of the other albums that have really interested me and I liked quite a bit, but for whatever reason I didn't get it. I'll try to, as we go along, I'll try to explain why I didn't get them. The first one is this Game Meister from Lars Fredrik Frosley. Sorry, kind of messed that up a bit. Yeah, a lot of people like those box sets. Once you start on the box sets, then some of these other things. The problem with the regular CDs is a lot of times they don't really have great sound. Not all of them. Some of them are good. The newer ones, of course, are good, but some of the older ones, not so good. Box sets tend to be very good for the most part. So this album, Gammelmeister, this is a good, solid album from this guy. And because we haven't had any Wobbler for a while, it's been that much more important to me. Yeah, it's the listening sound that really is the part that can make or break an album. So you have an album that you really like, but it has a lousy sound to it. It's not going to do that well with you. That's just the way it is. So I have several albums that are not the best of sound. And if I was doing it again, I probably wouldn't have got them. But my purchasing way has been good. So I'm hoping this Guess Who thing, which is a box set, will be better than the albums themselves. We'll find out when it comes, right? Next up, there's a couple of others here that I quite like, and I'm going to try and go through them. So a lot of stuff out there that I never listened to, that there's a lot of that crossover prog. So I'm not sure what they mean by crossover prog. Yeah, possibly I will, but don't hold your breath. I'm not in the financial ability to do that. I've had great marriages and great problems with my children. Anyways, yeah, some of these crossover prog albums interest me because I don't really know what they're referring to. I know that they're proggy, but what does that mean, crossover? Are they part rock? Is that what they're saying? I'm not really sure. I do like some of this folk prog because I tend to like folk music. I tend to like it. It tends to be amongst my favorite type of music. And there was one band here called A Bridge Too Far. The album is called Mid Lake, At least I think I got the band right. The band is Midlake and the album is A Bridge Too Far. It's a folk prog album. I don't know much about it. I think I've listened to a couple tracks off of it. I think are pretty decent. So I think it's something I'm going to look into. But the problem with waiting sometimes is, yeah, you don't want to pay that big price. But the problem with waiting sometimes is that they just disappear and you don't get them. And that's sometimes the risk you have to take, right? Looking here through some more of them. Okay, this Eclipse of the Midnight Sun, which is a neo-prog from Tailq. I think that's what they're called. This is an album that I listened to a couple of tracks off of too, and I liked this, so I looked around for it, and it wasn't easy to find. When I did find it, of course, it was expensive, The Sound of Silence from Red Sand. This is an excellent album. I think it finished in my top 5 last year. I couldn't get it. I tried to get it. They were sold out. Then I couldn't find it. Then when I did find it, they wanted too much. And then I tried to. Ken had it at Laser CD, and then I went to purchase it there, and it was sold out again. So I haven't had much luck with this album, but I think it's definitely a top 5 album from last year as far as prog goes. If I was giving it a ranking, which I'm reluctant to do because I don't own it, I would probably give it a 7 for now, but I think it's capable of being even higher than that. Skipping down here to a couple of others that I've been wanting to talk about as well. Okay, so you have the 2 Ekelin albums that came out last year, Time Silent Radio number, I guess you would call it number 7, and then Time Silent Radio number 2. And the reason for the numbers, of course, is that on Time Silent Radio number 2, they only have 2 tracks. And on Time Silent Radio number 7, they have 7 tracks. That's the reason for that. They both came out on the same day. I'm not sure why they didn't just release it as a double album. That makes perfect sense to me. They tend to rate the Time Silent Radio 7 as the better of the 2 albums. I like both of them. They're both pretty solid. I do like this band, even though they're American, and I tend not to like American prog as much, but these guys are pretty good. They have a nice sound to their stuff. I do own 1 album by them, and I like it. It's the I think it's pronounced My Album or the May album. Quite good. And I think these 2 are probably close to that same kind of level as well. Yeah, moving right on along down here. There's another album that I find it kind of a little bit curious. Now, I don't know if anybody's had a chance to kind of listen to this. It's called Ashwing, and it's a self-titled album. It's also crossover prog. I did hear a little bit of this. I'm not sure what I'm hearing, though, so I can't really make too much of a comment about it. If anybody's had any experience with the album, let me know. If you like to kind of know what I'm getting into. Okay, here's the one from Green Carnation. This is a band that experimental post-metal, they call them. A Dark Poem, Part 1, The Shores of Melancholia. It's got an interesting cover. It looks like a masked woman in a cloak, kind of a different sound to it. I'm not really sure about whether I like this album or not. I think this is an album like so much prog albums. You got to listen to it for a while till it makes sense to you, or until you penetrate it. Blazing Revelations by Dominic Sanderson's another one. This is really good, actually. Electric prog. I like this a lot. If I bought it, which had occurred to me to do, I tried to get it several times. I'm sure it would have been a top 10 album for me as well. Definitely a strong album. Giving it maybe a 6.5 or 7 out of 10 because I simply don't own it. If I did own it, I think the ranking would be a little bit higher. Okay, moving right along here. And then, of course, they have the Time Silent Radio #2 here, which is 2 epic length tracks. Quite good. I can see why the 7, though, got a little bit higher of a ranking. I think it's mainly because the tracks are shorter, easier to absorb than the longer tracks. That's typical. But I tend to like those 8 to 10 to 12-minute prog tracks. If you look at my Rush collection, for example, my favorite most of the time, my top, if I was doing a top 20 favorite progs or favorite songs from Rush, the prog songs that are near the top are generally the mid-range epic length tracks, not the 2112s or Fountain of Lammas, but those ones that are like Vitor and the Snow Dog and Natural Science, that kind of stuff. And I think that's why I kind of probably prefer this one a little more than the other one. Keep going down. So here's a band that I don't know anything about. I haven't heard this album, but every time I see them, I think I got to hear this. Out There Was is the name. No, Once There Was is the name of the album, and the band is called The Far Cry, which sounds like they maybe took the title from Rush's Snakes and Arrows Far Cry. It could be, but they're a neo-prog band, so I don't know much about their music at all, but if anybody has any opinions on that, I'd be interested as well. Moving along, we have another band, Siege, from Imaginarium, another prog, neo-prog band, which I often stop and look at their stuff, but for whatever reason, I don't get to listen to it, and I wonder how good they are as well. Keep looking, you'll find them. Yeah, I thought it was a pretty strong year for prog last year. Lots of stuff out there that you just can't buy everything unless you got an endless wallet, which I don't. Okay, here's the other one, Rethink by Aerospace, or Aerostation, I should say. Interesting album cover. It's a man's head with flowers growing out of it as a replacement for hair. Maybe I should consider that. What do you think? I did like this album quite a bit. It probably would have made my list. If it didn't make my list, I think it might have made my list. I'd have to go look. But I think it was close to the list because I quite liked it, but it was hard to get it because they didn't have it at Laser CD, and the place that the site that had them, I think originally only had the upload, the computer link version of it, and no CD. And then I think they did get a CD, but I thought it was kind of a little bit pricey. So definitely an album on my list to get. It just may not get it the year that it came out. Here's another big one for me that I tried several times to get. So it was sold out both times I tried to get it, and then I couldn't find it. And then when I did find it, it was like typical, too expensive. And that's the album Clan from Solstice. Now, this is a band that I like, and I've tried several times to get albums they've put out, and it hasn't worked out. But I keep trying. I go on Laser CD for this because he is also Glenn is also Ken is also a fan of this band, so I know that he will get more of their stuff. I just have to keep waiting, and eventually it'll come to me. So this album, Solstice Clan, I think this was a top 5 album for me last year. Probably would have finished. Maybe it could have won it if I had bought the album, but I just never got it. And that's Solstice Clan. Really good album. Probably would give this like a 7 as well. Moving down, we're getting down to the bottom here. Okay, here's one that I did, Soft Fog, an album. This is a jazz fusion album of all things. Not something I talk too much about. The album was called Focus. It was pretty damn good. I did like this album. I think it was primarily an instrumental. It might have been all instrumental, but I think my memory is that it was instrumental primarily. There may have been some vocals on it. I can't remember, but I'm sure it made my list, or it was right near making my list last year. I thought it was a pretty good jazz fusion album. Probably a little bit more prog in it than jazz fusion, or probably a little more prog in it than most jazz fusion albums, and that's probably why it did well with me. But I did like it. Okay, so we've already talked about this Road to Dust, which is the Eden song, and that's it. That's all that came out over. They've given their top 100, so I'm guessing that they just gave the top 100, all albums that ranked for them. They give them as 3 points or 4 points, so most of them were 4.0s or 4.5 or whatever albums. So that, my friends, is all the albums. Only 5 prog albums, but I do have some other albums that I purchased that weren't prog albums from last year. And maybe next week I'll do, well, actually I'm not going to, but in a few weeks I'll probably do the Sunday morning breakfast live video in which I'll talk about maybe the albums that came out last year that weren't prog. And there was a few of them that I quite liked. We all know that the Alice Cooper one was going to be right up there. Very strong album, so we'll be talking about that too. Probably do that. Now, for this particular show, the one we're in, it's going to come to an end shortly, but I wanted to let you know there will be no Into the Progverse next Sunday, as that is a special day in my history. It's the 62nd birthday for me, and on all likelihood, I will not be home in the evening for this show, so we will be cutting that show out for next week. But we'll be back normally for the week after. I haven't chosen a topic yet, but I will get to one sometime during the week and put it out. So hopefully you enjoyed the episode. Anytime we're talking about new albums, it's kind of exciting. I've got some new stuff coming. I'm excited about it. So look forward to seeing you all in a couple of weeks on this show on Sunday night at 8 o'clock. And please enjoy the rest of your evening, and we will see you all then. Take care. Have yourself a good one, and have a good one. And good night, Ben. Thanks for supporting the channel. Take care and goodbye.